Chapter 186. Raon opened his eyes with difficulty. He could see a luxurious ceiling, where the harmony between right angles and curves resembled a piece of art. Where am I? Judging from the majestic appearance of the ceiling, it definitely wasn't the clinic. He wasn't sure why, but Rimmer must have brought him there. Ugh. He tried raising his body while looking around, but every single part of his body hurt. From his fingers to his energy center, a shooting pain could be felt throughout his entire body. It's certainly difficult to defeat a master. A master's astral energy with killing intent was so powerful that he could barely last. The fifth clash created an internal injury, and he barely managed to suppress the blood flowing up from his throat during that last clash. Considering the fact that he hadn't completely recovered despite a healer presumably visiting him, as well as Sloth's effect during his sleep, his body must have been in the worst possible state, to the point that he really could have died. Ha! Raon stood up while exhaling slowly. Although it still felt painful, it wasn't unbearable. You woke up so late. As he was about to leave the bed after putting away the blanket, wrath popped out from the ice flower bracelet. You are really pathetic. To be in such a state after winning against a weakling like that, what a frail body you have. Wrath clicked his tongue, saying that it was an embarrassment. Is that so? So? Raon snickered, looking at Wrath, whose round eyes were staring down at him. Now that I think about it, I didn't properly express my gratitude. What gratitude are you talking about? You helped me 2 whole times during the fight against the 7th apostle. Thank you. Wrath warned him about the 10th apostle's surprise attack before Raon could even sense it, and he stopped him from picking a fight against him when Raon couldn't calmly analyze the situation. If it weren't for Rimmer and Wrath, the Light Wind, including himself, might have been annihilated. Even you must have judged that the 10th apostle is pretty strong. I guess that would be the case, since he must be a grandmaster if he surpassed another wall after master. What madness are you spouting? Wrath frowned, saying that it was nonsense. Both master and grandmaster are insignificant ranks that you humans have created. The difference between them is as much as the difference between an ant and a winged ant for the King of Essence. Ah! Anyone that's not on the same level as your head of house is pretty much an insect that can be crushed with a finger for the King of Essence. Then why did you even warn me about fighting him? Raon thought Wrath had finally learned his lesson, since he was acting differently from before. However, he realized from what Wrath said that he was mistaken. That's obviously because of the promise. Promise? You promised, remember? That you would eat the beet ice cream sets, and 2 different special dishes in this city. I did. He did make that promise while using Wrath for gambling. However, he couldn't understand why Wrath was talking about that. You probably didn't notice it, but your condition was really serious back then. If your internal injury had gotten any worse, you might not have been able to eat anything until we left this place, or you could have died like an idiot. Helping you was the natural course of action. Wrath moved around Raon to check his condition. The King of Essence's calculation wasn't wrong. You recovered a lot with Sloth's effect. You should be able to visit a restaurant in around 2 days. He clenched his fist, saying that he definitely would not miss the specials this time. Ah, so what you are saying is that you didn't stop me because you wanted to help, but because you wanted to eat, right? Yes. Wrath nodded firmly. Even his proud look seemed hateful. I shouldn't have expected anything from you. He thought Wrath had changed a bit because he was worrying about him, but he was mistaken. The Demon King only stopped him because he was worried that the promised meal would be delayed or cancelled. I'm so tired of you. The way he could prioritize his appetite over his wrath in that situation was amazing. He was indeed the Demon King of gluttony, and food was his highest priority. Shut up and remember the names of these dishes. Lanchulan stir-fried chicken. Whir. As Wrath was talking about food while shoving his head forward like a bison, the blade of Requiem vibrated from the table. Blade of Requiem? Raon grabbed the trembling blade of Requiem. Yes, you also did great. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the blade of Requiem allowed him to win the fight, since he wouldn't have been able to inflict as much damage on the 7th apostle without it. I'll slay the 10th apostle next time and find your archenemy as well. The blade of Requiem offers purified bloody energy. Raon expressed his gratitude and caressed the hilt. Pure energy flew towards him from the blade of Requiem, and a message appeared. It's incomparably bigger than the last time. Although the blade of Requiem only drank the blood of 2 people, the Archbishop and the 7th Apostle, the energy flowing into his mana circuit was denser than the last time, when he killed dozens of fanatics at once. He could guess that the amount was decided from the bloody energy's quality rather than the quantity. Whir! Just like pure mana, the purified bloody energy flowed throughout the mana circuits of his entire body, enhancing his muscles and bones, and it even managed to heal his damaged organs. Ha! Raon unconsciously exclaimed. His body didn't feel strained at all upon receiving the energy due to its high purity. The purified energy is healing your injured body. All stats have increased by 6 points in all stats. Considering the fact that his stats were much higher than before, it was a huge increase. However, it wasn't over yet. Trait adaptation to ghastly energy has increased to 3 stars. Adaptation to ghastly energy's rank had also increased, allowing him to better control ghastly energy. The energy coming from the blade of Requiem felt more familiar, just like the aura inside his body. Ha! Raon raised himself up, clenching his fist. The pain had decreased a lot, and he could feel a lot more strength in his body. He could feel a clear growth in his skills. Nice. He turned his head after concluding that his body was almost fully recovered, and Wrath was floating there with a sour face. Why aren't you saying anything for once? Normally, he would have started causing a ruckus already, but he wasn't doing anything for some reason. Back in Devildom, the King of Essence was famous for his dignity and composure. Everyone bowed at his proud nature. Wrath wrinkled his nose, while looking at the blade of Requiem. There's no way the King of Essence would be surprised, since he already knew that the insignificant creature was purifying the bloody energy even before you collapsed. I see. Raon was already sighing when Wrath called himself dignified. It was amazing that he could call himself dignified despite being lighter than a feather. If you want to surprise this monarch of Wrath, you need something as shocking as half the continent disappearing. Wrath tried to continue while sniffling, and new messages appeared. You've achieved victory in an unwinnable duel. The proficiency of Ring of Fire has increased greatly. Trait Iron Will has increased to 3 stars. Trait Focus has increased to 3 stars. All stats have increased by 6. Wrath's jaw dropped at seeing the series of messages. Wow! He was already satisfied with the ghastly energy from the blade of Requiem recovering his body and increasing his stats, yet he got extra stats and trait ranks increase on top of that. Whir! His fingertips trembled with joy at having his stats increased one more time. His body was filled with vitality, and the overflowing energy was even stronger than before he fainted. It was difficult to believe his body was seriously injured, since he felt like he could even have a rematch against the 7th Apostle right away. What is this shit? Wrath was stunned as he read the second set of messages. Why are there so many increases from defeating a weakling like him? Are you trying to completely ruin the King of Essence's main body? He wasn't exactly a weakling, since he was a master. He's a weakling if the King of Essence says so. A single finger of the main body is enough to crush him. But you can't. Ahem. Wrath stopped rampaging for a moment, because Raon pointed out the sad reality. Anyway, this can't be happening. This is too much of a reward for defeating an insect that surpassed a mere wall. The dignity and composure that he was always supposed to have was completely gone as he showed his personality. That ugly side was the true face of Wrath. I'll never accept this. He glared at the system window in denial. However, the system remained silent, as it was already gone. Unless a sword strikes the head of the King of Essence. As soon as Wrath mentioned a sword striking his head, Raon smacked the back of Wrath's head with the blade of Requiem without drawing it. Arg! What are you doing? Since a sword hit you, you are fine with it now, right? Seriously, you asshole. Wrath even stopped talking like a king, puffing himself up. It looked like he would start attacking at any time. You are the monarch of Devildom. Moreover, you said you are one of the highest-ranked monarchs. Raon tilted his head, tapping on Wrath's pointy head to push him down. Yes. The King of Essence is one of the 7 monarchs of Devildom. It's a throne that everyone worships. Since you are such an amazing monarch, you should have a large number of stats. Of course. It's incomparable to someone like you. That means you won't even feel a difference if I take a little, right? Of course, SE. Wrath finally realized something was strange, and slightly raised the end of his sentence. In that case, it's fine if you give me a little. Even so, it should only happen after serious matters, rather than trivial. Who made this system? Ugh. Wrath pouted as he glared at Raon, unable to respond. Because of what he said, he couldn't even argue anymore. Don't be so angry. Since I'm completely recovered now, I'm going to keep the promise with you now. Really? Since my internal injuries are almost healed because of the Blade of Requiem, it should be okay to eat right now. Raon nodded. He wasn't sure how long he'd been sleeping, but his stomach was yelling at him to give it food as soon as his body was healed. Just as even a Cerberus dung isn't completely useless, that insignificant creature can be helpful sometimes. Whir! The Blade of Requiem vibrated fiercely as its pride was hurt by Wrath's words. What are you waiting for? Let's go feast on some ice cream already. Patience. Raon calmed Wrath down since he started dancing in the air. As Raon stood up and was about to go outside, footsteps approached from afar, and the door opened. Raon. Oh. Vice Squad Leader. You woke up. It was Runan and Dorian. The two ran up to the bed, shoving their faces towards him. Are you okay? Okay? I'm okay. I'm sorry. Runan's shoulders drooped. She seemed to be apologizing for not being next to him at the most important moment. You don't need to be sorry. Raon waved his hand dismissively while smiling. It was better that she wasn't with him back then, since the incident with the blood-raving demon could have repeated itself otherwise. Where is this place? They said it's an annex building reserved for special guests. It's even more luxurious than the city hall. Dorian smiled happily, looking around the room. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to announce this to the others. He waved his hand and left the room before Raon could stop him. Stop wasting time. Let's go right away. We need to head straight to the restaurant. The King of Essence knows a good one. Let me take care of something first. Take care? What are you doing this time? This won't take long. Raon nodded. There's someone that needs a scolding. Martha was just sitting there, looking up at the sky. Ha! The dim gray sky reminded her of the incident 3 days ago, the moment when she was unable to do anything during her long-desired encounter with her archenemy. Damn it! The 10th Apostle was the exact same as 10 years ago, when he intruded into the village to kill people like bugs. No, he was even stronger than back then. The huge difference between herself and him was making her feel like all her training up to that point was meaningless. And the most pathetic part was that the one that declared she would fight him wasn't herself, but Raon, who had no grudge against him. He really is crazy. Raon's internal injuries were much more serious than hers. In fact, he was still bedridden, unable to regain consciousness. Despite his critical state, he still wanted to fight against the 10th Apostle, and declared that she would kill him in the future. Insane was the only way to describe him. At that point, Martha was so shocked that she could only admire him rather than being amazed. Is this what people call being born different? Might, willpower, and even his fighting spirit, there was too much of a difference between Raon and herself, who was nothing but talk. She never thought someone 1 year younger than she was could make her feel so ashamed. However, she felt more grateful than anything else, since she would have died before she could say anything to the 10th Apostle if it weren't for him. And the first team would have been annihilated as well, as they couldn't maintain the formation because of her. She was just grateful to Raon in many ways. Ha! The Vice Squad Leader woke up. Sir Raon is up. As Martha bit her lips and tried to stand, Dorian's voice could be heard from behind her. After hesitating for a moment, she swallowed nervously and slowly walked towards Raon's room. The Light Wind members flocked to Raon's room upon hearing the news from Dorian. Raon. Are you okay? Does it hurt anywhere? Hey! You should call him sir. He's the vice squad leader. But the mission is over. Can't we just act casually now? Ha! I am not sure. Raon smiled faintly, looking at the Light Wind members filling the room. They are pretty much my family now. Although they were antagonistic towards him and laughed at him the first time they met him, the only feelings reflected in their eyes now were worry and relief. Raon could feel their heartwarming emotions on his skin. How about the wounded? Raon asked Bian, who was standing in the center. Martha still has some internal injuries remaining, but most are completely healed because they had minor injuries, sir. Bian seemed to consider the mission still in progress, as he spoke respectfully. How about the hostages? They are all safe. Runan nodded, sitting next to the bed. Anything else? Just as you suspected, the white blood fanatics hidden inside Porvan City made their move as soon as their branch collapsed. Solomon immediately reacted to subdue them, but they set fires while running away, burning down a few food warehouses as a result, sir. How about casualties? None, sir. That's a relief. Raon nodded, listening to Bun's report. Where's the squad leader? He left after seeing the healer treating the vice squad leader and hasn't returned yet. He's probably... Bun sighed deeply and frowned. At the gambling house. Raon nodded. Since Rayon's injuries weren't fatal despite being serious, and the mission was over, Rimmer must have gladly gone to the gambling house. Shitty-Ear's actions are really consistent. For real. Wrath exclaimed in admiration. Rimmer was truly an amazing elf, enough to be acknowledged by the Demon King. Good job, everyone. We managed to finish the mission without any fatalities thanks to everyone doing their part. Raon nodded, looking around at the Light Wind members. Holding a debrief after the mission was normally the squad leader's job, but since he was gone, it was his job now. It wasn't, though. We didn't do anything. That's right. The vice leader did everything. You defeated an apostle. Although Raon only defeated 2 white blood fanatics, the Light Wind members waved their hands in denial because he defeated the Archbishop and the 7th apostle. That doesn't mean everything was perfect. First of all, the second team. MHH? Runan's eyes widened, since she was the second team's leader. You did a good job at evacuating the hostages and defending our position, but you failed to take care of the few hostages remaining inside the mansion. Next time, you should count the number of hostages, and evacuate everyone without missing anyone. MHM. I mean, yes. Runan answered and nodded. Next up is the third team. Yes. Bian straightened his neck and back. He was blinking nervously. You did excellently. Ha! You were late, or rather, couldn't participate in the training at all, but you still displayed perfect control of the Light Wind formation thanks to staying up all night to study the formation and strategy. It's thanks to you, Bian, that the third team has the least number of casualties. Good job. Since he didn't expect to be praised, his throat visibly bobbed. The way he was tightly biting his lips showed that he was suppressing his turbulent emotion. But we couldn't participate in the battle against the apostle. Your mission was to attack from behind and stop their reinforcements. Stopping the fanatics from entering from behind was good enough. Although they had fewer enemies, there were more priests and bishops. Since the third team managed to stop them, it was nothing short of a perfect completion of the mission. Lastly, the first team. Martha and the first team shuddered upon being called. You were the worst. A cold gaze was directed at them from Rayon's eyes. The team leader was overwhelmed by anger and went on a rampage alone, meanwhile the members were limping around like flies while trying to follow her. If it had been a frontal clash instead of a surprise attack, people would most certainly have died. It was our fault. We weren't good enough to follow the team leader. When the first team's vice leader tried to step up, Raon raised his hand. Of course, there were some problems with you. However, it was mostly the team leader's fault, as she went berserk without caring about the members. Martha. Martha bit her lip and stepped forward, heeding Rayon's call. I know you hold resentment against the white blood religion. However, this is a mission. The lives of your team members and the hostages should have taken priority over your resentment. As Raon reprimanded her, Martha silently listened, not saying anything. The fact that the second team that went to the center missed some hostages was also partly your fault. They would have been able to rescue all of the hostages if the first team had properly created a space by setting up the formation. What do you think, first team leader? I'm sorry. Martha bowed at a 90-degree angle, admitting all her mistakes. Considering the way her shoulders and neck weren't trembling at all, she wasn't doing that against her will. Since it was their first time seeing her bow so deeply, every member of the Light Wind widened their eyes. The first team's members must have been confused by my arbitrary actions. Since I didn't even communicate with them, it's entirely my fault. Once she raised her head, her eyes were reflecting an indescribable light. Sorrow, pain, anger, or gratitude. Various emotions seemed to be mixed inside. Are you admitting your mistake? Yes. You said Alang village, right? Raon mentioned the name of the village Martha had shouted at the 10th apostle, meeting her eyes directly. I can't say that your revenge is ours, but the Light Wind is already in the same boat. We will definitely encounter the White Blood religion again. He continued, looking at other Light Wind members, including her. I'd like you to tell us your story one day, once your heart is ready. All right. Martha slowly closed, then opened her eyes before nodding. Gasp. What is happening? Wow. The Light Wind members dropped their jaws from hearing another unexpected answer. And there's one good thing you did. What? You charged ahead in order to save your team members when the 10th apostle appeared. Huh? Really? Really? That's not true. I just wanted to startle him. The first team's members looked at her, and Martha shook her head as her face turned red. Well, anyway, the debrief is over. Raon ignored Martha's excuses, standing up to clap his hands like Rimmer. Did the squad leader visit the mayor? He went to deliver the report with me after the incident. He shouldn't have been there after that, since the mayor was extremely busy dealing with the aftermath. Bayan murmured that Rimmer also must have been busy from playing around. Perfect. Raon smiled faintly and took off the hospital gown. You haven't recovered yet. Where are you going? I'll visit the mayor before the squad leader returns. The mayor said he would do anything as long as the case was solved. Since he already received plenty of stats and abilities, it was time to get the material rewards. Before the gambling addict returned. No. We were supposed to eat. Raon ignored the whining Raph. Chapter 187. Ren entered the audience chamber, a gray letter in his hand. My lord, we've received a report from the Light Wind leader. He walked up to Glenn, who was sitting on his throne, and handed over the gray letter. Report. Glenn frowned as he looked at the letter. I wonder if he can even write a report. Certainly, most of his reports were verbal when he was a head instructor. Yes. The only time he gave me a report in documents was during the survival exam. Ha ha. Ren smiled. Rimmer personally visited him to report most of the time. The only report he had prepared was the list of locations suitable for the trainees during the survival exam. Whir. Glenn raised his finger, and the letter floated on its own from Ren's hand, landing in front of him. Let's check it out. Glenn's hand trembled upon taking the letter from the envelope. What kind of report is this crazy bastard? Did anything happen? You should see it by yourself. Glenn handed over the document, which only contained 2 lines. Raon won against the 7th apostle. Wow. Mission complete. Ren fell speechless upon reading the contents of the letter. He was dumbstruck by the simplicity, and he felt dizzy from the ridiculous statement. Let alone the simplicity, an apostle should be at least. Yes, he's a master. There's no way that ageless monster would nominate someone that didn't surpass the wall as an apostle. Glenn nodded, looking at Ren's confused expression. The young master should still be an expert. How could he have defeated a master? I'm also curious about that. Moreover, I cannot grasp the situation because this damn bastard's report is too simple. He didn't even write whether he's safe or injured. Considering the simple expression, he shouldn't be seriously injured. Who knows? That gambling addict has a different mindset from us. At the very least, it must be true that he managed to defeat the seventh apostle. Rimmer isn't the type of person to lie about something like this. Ren swallowed nervously, holding the document in a trembling hand. Indeed. He defeated a master while being an expert himself. I rarely get surprised now that I've grown old, but young Master Raon surprises me every time. From my knowledge, he must be the first one on the continent. I've never heard of it before either. It's really bothersome that he doesn't lead a normal life. Glenn nodded. His eyes were sharp, but the corners of his mouth were drawing into a smooth curve. Why did he have to defeat an apostle and make me so curious? I know, right? Defeating a master as an expert. Everyone might go crazy. Ahem. Hoo-hoo. Ren smiled, watching as Glenn awkwardly boasted about his grandson. I want to issue an order to the shadow agents, but it will be faster to have the boy tell me about it directly. I want to make them return quickly and listen to the story. Yes, I'm also curious. And that bastard Rimmer needs a beating. Raon went to the city hall alongside the Light Wind Squad. Since the annex building was under the main street, they had to walk for a while to reach the city hall. Wait. That's blonde hair and red eyes. Sieghart's uniform. That's him. The Light Wind's vice leader, who defeated the seventh apostle. Raon Sieghart. The people on the main street exclaimed upon recognizing Raon. I heard he was seriously injured. Why does he look perfectly fine? The superhumans have a faster recovery, you know. I can't believe that such a young swordsman killed the archbishop and defeated an apostle. That's not all. He's the one that discovered the location of the white blood religion's Porvan branch. I heard he even declared that he would kill the 10th apostle. Is this what Sieghart is like? People were already aware of Raon's deeds. What's going on? Raon narrowed his eyes as he looked around. Everyone seemed to know about him. The rumor that you killed the archbishop and defeated the 7th apostle has already spread. Who? Ah, I guess that's obvious. He didn't even need to ask. It was clearly the gambling addict squad leader's doing, since he had nothing else to do. Well, the squad leader had the biggest contribution, but the hostages that remained there talked about you a lot. Bayan continued with a faint smile. People's awareness of the Light Wind Squad has increased tremendously thanks to you. Although it was just our first mission, the rumor is spreading that you are the best among the young warriors of the Six Kings. Raon frowned slightly. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. He looks even more awesome when he frowns. Indeed. A Sieghart needs a cold-blooded appearance like that. Is he not completely recovered yet? I guess. He must have a serious internal injury, since he defeated a master while being just an expert. He must be enduring the pain right now. And he even declared war against the 10th apostle in that state. He's a born hero. However, people exclaimed even more loudly, captivated by the frown. The positive interpretation made him somewhat understand why Rimmer told him to become famous. As he was about to enter City Hall with an awkward expression on his face, a group of people came out. It was Morel, Solomon, and Princess Jaina. As soon as the princess saw him, she shrieked as if she had seen a ghost, then stepped back. The others looked at her, and she lowered her reddening face. It's been a while. Raon bowed to Morel politely. How is your body? Body? But. Isn't the mission already over? Sir? Morel's eyes widened in panic, but he still remembered to add sir in the meantime. Indeed, the mission is over. I was just kidding. Ugh. Once he said it was a joke, Morel frowned and breathed out a sigh of relief. You are more playful than you look. I'm sorry. Raon smiled faintly. Anyway, you really did great. On top of finding the white blood religion's Porvan branch and defeating the archbishop, you even won against the 7th apostle. His eyes, which looked cold at a glance, were still reflecting his shock. I admit that our Bakker completely lost against Sieghart this time. There's no winning or losing since it was a mission. No, we did lose. Have you ever heard the Bakker name on your way here? That's... Morel was right. All he heard on the way was his own name, that of Sieghart and the Light Wind. The Six Kings are allies, but also competitors at the same time. It's a bit embarrassing to say, but Sieghart's stature has been raised while Bakker's stature has been lowered from this incident. Are you saying that a single mission affects the value of a name? That's what it means to put the Six Kings' name on the line. Moreover, everything you did was a surprise. The Archbishop was one thing, but I was completely shocked when I heard you defeated the seventh apostle, the apostle. I couldn't even properly extinguish the fire in the food warehouse because of that. Morel smiled bitterly in regret. TSK, it wasn't that amazing. Wrath clicked his tongue in frustration. Finish your business already and go to the restaurant. There was nothing but food and the restaurant in his head. The loser will leave now. There's nothing else for us to do here. Thank you for your effort. There wasn't really any effort. We've just been played by your plan. I don't understand how a weirdo like Rimmer managed to raise someone like you. He still gets serious when it comes down to it. But it rarely comes down to it. Well, that's... Anyway, I'll pay back today's humiliation the next time we meet. Morel shook his hand, then went down the main street. He was speaking rather nicely, but his pride seemed to be hurt. Sir Raon, I'll be looking forward to the next time we meet. Yes, see you again next time. Zadis bowed at a 90 degrees as he passed by, and Raon nodded with a smile. Princess Jaina walked between the magicians in order to avoid meeting his eyes. Princess, am I really not even getting a thanks, despite having saved you? While trying to run away, Jaina flinched and stopped walking. Thank you, sir. After saying that, she hurriedly turned around. I knew it. Raon snickered. As expected, the prideful princess didn't tell anyone about the incident. Hey! He called out to Inyald, who was walking at the very back. Yes? Ah, yes. He straightened his back like a soldier. He must have realized from the rumors that Raon was on a completely different level from him. You didn't get any serious injuries, right? Of course not. He answered, but he didn't have any front teeth. You should be careful in the future where you step in, since you might lose your life from recklessly interfering. Yes. Thank you for saving me. Raon tapped his shoulder, and Inyald's body trembled as he nodded. You can go now. Yes. Yes. He hurriedly ran towards Morel in order to avoid being called on again. Raon snickered, then opened the door to City Hall. He could guess that the rumor was also spread inside City Hall, since everyone inside widened their eyes. Raon nonchalantly accepted their surprised gazes, heading upstairs to see the mayor. Ooh. You woke up. As soon as he entered, Porvan's mayor, Owist, quickly stood and ran up to him. His big face was filled with a smile. How is your body? I've recovered thanks to your consideration. That's a relief. He nodded, maintaining a big smile. Please, take a seat. Yes. Raon sat on the chair the mayor pointed to. You really did something amazing. You saved my life. No, it wouldn't be excessive to say that you saved Porvan City. Well, it's not that much. No. It's true. The mayor shook his head violently. Let alone the matter with the white blood religion, Bakker would have enveloped the entire city of Porvan in flames if the kidnapped princess couldn't be rescued. You found the branch to save the princess, and even defeated the archbishop and the apostle. Owist wasn't just flattering him, since it was true that the Bakker's king treasured the princess. I don't know how I can repay the favor of saving me, the citizens, and the city itself. He stood up from his chair and bowed deeply to express his gratitude. I've only completed a mission bestowed upon me. Raon showed humility, for instance. What are you doing? You came here to get money. Show your true nature. Wrath yelled at him to show his true nature already instead of wasting time. Wait a little. I can't just straight up say that. He casually shook his head. Since you've completely removed the white blood religions branch and even defeated an apostle, I'd like to grant any of your wishes. Ah, now that you mention, you said you would grant a reward once we completed the mission, right? Yes. Yes. I did. Owist confidently thumped his chest. Well, in that case. Raon stretched his hand towards Dorian on his right side. Yes. Dorian put his hand in his belly pocket, taking out a contract filled with lots of small letters. Actually, we have so many shortages because we are a new organization. I'm really thankful that you are willing to provide us with everything. What? I didn't say everything, though. First of all, there is too much dust in our training ground. We need to fill it with soft soil, which is best suited for training. Before Owist could finish the denial, Raon mentioned the first article written on the contract. Soft soil's price is. Next, I'd like to give our members a small elixir per person, because they are too exhausted from fighting this time. The price of elixirs is a problem, but the supply. And we'd like Sage's fabrics to maintain our swords, as many as our members. Sage's fabric is more expensive than high-quality silk. We also need some activity funds because we are a new organization, as I mentioned before. I think this much gold should be appropriate as compensation. Gold on top of all those articles? Yes, we absolutely need them. Raon ignored all the denials from Owist, listing the articles written in the contract before proceeding to the gold part, where he showed the precise amount they needed. Wah! Owist's eyes lost focus upon seeing the articles and the amount of gold. Do you guys need anything? I want to refill the supplies that I used during this mission. Dorian immediately raised his hand. Since I used them during the mission, it should be okay, right? Oh, of course, that's fine. Owist nodded despite his confused state. Really? Then, please buy me these items. Dorian took out from his belly pocket a paper even longer and wider than Raon's. First, one big club, a small club, a special contract, a normal contract, and 17 tents and sleeping bags. I also used a smokescreen bead and a lighting bead. But you still have the clubs and the tents. You know that the value depreciates after usage. I feel like my words are getting twisted. Owist's face gradually turned pale. He grasped his stomach with trembling hands. I need equipment to maintain the training outfit. I saw a product using water magic stones and wind magic stones on the way here. Bayan didn't miss the opportunity, mentioning an object used for maintaining clothes. I don't have any. Beat ice cream. Martha shook her head and said she didn't need anything, and Runan mentioned the ice cream, as expected. Ice cream? Sure, be my guest. Shop. Owist cheered up for the first time, but his face turned yellow again once Runan continued. What? Beat ice cream shop. Raon left City Hall with the contract signed by Owist. Because of what he said before, he had to sign the paper, grasping his stomach as if he had an ulcer. The signature was a bit messy because of that. What a terrible guy. Wrath shook his head in revulsion. He didn't seem to believe that Raon would seriously get everything written on the contract. You gotta thoroughly benefit from an opportunity. Since you could never anticipate when the next opportunity would occur, you had to benefit from it as much as you could when you had one. Moreover, all the money would have become Rimmer's gambling money if he missed it. I earned quite a lot. Adding Owist's gold to what he earned from the casino, he had enough money to settle anywhere on the continent, which felt rather reassuring. While he was tapping on his inner pocket, where he placed the gold, he could see Runan pouting slightly. She seemed to be sulking a little because her request for an ice cream shop wasn't granted. I can't buy you a shop, but I'll buy all kinds of ice cream instead. Let's eat for now. MHM. Once Raon said he would buy her all the ice cream she wanted, she stopped pouting and nodded. Where was the restaurant you wanted to go to again? Raon tapped Wrath, who had his arms crossed in displeasure. Are we finally going? I promised, so I'm keeping it. Fine. That's what a human should do. The name is the Eastern Coxcomb. It's famous for dishes made of chicken. How did you even find out about that place? While you were investigating those fanatics, the King of Essence investigated the restaurants. That's amazing. It looked like he had gathered information about restaurants with his hearing. His passion was worthy of admiration. Since the mission is over, let's go eat together. Today, I'll buy. Raon gathered the swordsmen and invited them to eat together. Oh. Really? How generous. I knew you were different from the squad leader. I heard the Eastern Coxcomb is nice. Does anyone know its location? I do. Dorian immediately raised his hand. He really knew everything, Raon thought. Let's go there since they apparently make delicious chicken. Yes. While Dorian guided them to the Eastern Coxcomb, a red-haired elf walked towards them from the front, his shoulders drooping. Squad leader? Raon? You woke up. Rimmer removed his frown and smiled brightly as he approached them. You have a healthy complexion. Though, weren't your wounds more severe than this? It's all thanks to your quick measures. What? Ah, yes. I did really well back then. Rimmer agreed with a grin. But you look like you lost everything. I didn't really lose. Judging from his dubious voice, he must have lost down to the ground in the gambling house. Which casino did you gamble at? Cat's Jelly. Raon felt like he heard that name before, and it sounded like a den of swindlers. Since we are having a meal together, how about joining us? Meal? Meal? Of course. I'll join. But this squad leader has something left to do. I'll join you later. All right, come to the Eastern Coxcomb. Raon bowed, before heading towards the road on the right side. Okay. Rimmer waved his hand, then went to City Hall. A smile secretly appeared in his awkward expression. He finally woke up. I can go there now. His conscience didn't allow him to discuss monetary rewards while Raon was still unconscious. That was why he postponed the meeting with the mayor, and he decided that it was fine now. Hoo, you are all dead. Gambling was all about how much one could stake. Rimmer was already smiling, looking forward to gambling with the huge amount of reward that the mayor would give him. HNNGH. Rimmer went to the mayor's room, humming in anticipation. Welcome, Sword of Light. Owist was grasping his stomach, his face pale. He looked like he wasn't feeling too well. Are you okay? You don't look healthy. Ah, I just have a sore stomach. You should be careful with your body. Rimmer worriedly examined Owist from top to bottom. I am all right. Owist personally made some tea and placed it in front of Rimmer. But what's the purpose? You remember what we talked about before, that you would give us additional rewards after this mission. I see, you came to confirm. Ha, your subordinates are really amazing. Sorry? Rimmer opened his hand to get the money, but his eyes widened. Everything they requested was of high quality, but I couldn't even refuse because it was still possible to acquire it in Porvan. I'm sure he thoroughly prepared beforehand. Owist sighed, while placing the contract on the table. This is. Rimmer realized what was happening after reading the words and the names on the contract. Raon and the Light Wind had beaten him to the punch. Getting extorted to this extent was a first in my career as the mayor. I realized once again that I have to be careful of what I say. I should have said that I would grant something like 5 requests. Owist tightly grasped his sour stomach once again. You must have been worried about whether the Light Wind managed to negotiate properly, but there's no need. Starting from Sir Raon, all of them are amazing fellows. Ha. By the way, how about the additional gold? They took it, of course. He pointed at the empty coffer behind him. They didn't only take the articles, but also the activity funds. I'll have to spend my own money on top of the city's budget. Ah. So, they even took the gold. Rimmer nodded like a fool. He couldn't bring himself to ask for more money when Owist mentioned he would spend his personal money on top of the city's budget. Since I've confirmed, I'll get going. A sorrowful tear dropped from the gambling addict's left eye as he turned around. It's a tiger cub that I raised. Chapter 188. Raon entered the restaurant called the Eastern Coxcomb with Wrath, who was dancing in the air in excitement. Contrary to its large appearance and supposed popularity, there was barely anyone inside and the food's fragrance couldn't be found either. Welcome. Gasp. A middle-aged man with slightly droopy eyes seemed to be the manager. His jaw dropped after examining Raon, who was taking the lead. Are you actually the young sword demon, Sir Raon? Young sword demon? The rumor spread that the young sword demon that defended Haben Castle was the vice squad leader. That's why people recently started calling Sir Raon the young sword demon. Dorian silently stepped up next to him and whispered. Young sword demon. It sounded relatively weak for someone that defeated an apostle, but it couldn't be helped. The man that was called the sword demon was a powerful grandmaster. Benefactor. My name is Twell. The manager introduced himself as Twell, then suddenly leaned forward and lowered his head. Benefactor? My daughter safely returned thanks to the benefactor. Thank you very much. Belle. He shouted at the kitchen, his head still lowered, and a woman came out wearing a white bandana around her head. Her droopy eyes looked similar to the manager's. Ha? Ooh. The woman named Belle hurriedly ran towards Raon upon recognizing his face. Sir Raon. You woke up. Do you know me? I was there when Sir Raon was fighting against the apostle. Ah. If she was there, she must have been one of the hostages that couldn't run away because of the aggravated situation. Are you hurt anywhere? It was all thanks to Sir Raon's consideration. You kept a distance from us in order to avoid harming us. Raon licked his lips. He did lead the apostle to a place with nothing behind them in order to avoid damaging the swordsman and hostages around them, and she must have noticed his intentions. I'm really grateful. It was all thanks to you that I returned home safely. I'd also like to express my gratitude, benefactor. The father and daughter bowed at him. From the way their hands were trembling, Raon could tell at a glance that they were thanking him from the bottom of their hearts. Raon felt a tingling sensation in his heart. The gratitude from people who'd been saved by him was more impressive than the random people outside praising him as powerful and amazing. I don't even need to eat at this point. Although he hadn't started eating yet, he already felt like he was full. Stop saying bullshit and start ordering already. Wrath frowned, telling him to cut the crap. Benefactor, we will do anything we can do for you. The manager spread his arms, telling him to say anything he wanted. No, it's enough for me that your daughter is safe. Raon smiled at them, and their mouths became round open. It looked like they didn't expect him to say that it was okay without making any requests. No, but still. Then, please prepare our meal. We all came here to eat, after all. Ah, of course. By the way. Yes? Our restaurant's pride, the Lanchulin stir-fried chicken, is unavailable right now. We are out of ingredients. The manager bitterly bit his lips. Are you out of ingredients? When the white blood fanatics set fires while running away, the food storehouse that we shared with a few other restaurants burned down. Ah, that's why. He thought it was strange that the restaurant was empty. It was because they ran out of ingredients. Coo. A beast's groan could be heard from Wrath's mouth. Again? Again? Again. Just like the first time they met, Wrath puffed up and spread out a huge amount of coldness and wrath. How could they burn down the ingredients? Why is the King of Essence never able to eat anything? All I want is a single dish, yet something stops me every single time. Does the world hate the King of Essence or something? It can't be helped if it's burned down. It's all your fault. Everything would have been okay if you were defending this restaurant instead of fighting that shitter. Stop being unreasonable. It's not unreasonable. The King of Essence would have turned both of them into ice in an instant before coming here to extinguish the fire. But I'm not you. That's why. Give me your body. The King of Essence will catch everyone from the white blood religion or white shit religion or whatever, then separate them into bones and flesh. Of course I won't. You. Rath shrank like a flat balloon and sank on the floor. It's over now. I'm never going to believe you ever again, nor grant your requests. But we still have the ice cream. Rath didn't respond, despite Raon mentioning the ice cream. He quickly turned his head, showing how angry he was. Since I saw a few beat ice cream shops were open, I'll buy 2 sets. Dad, we've got Lontics. Ah. You are right. As Raon was trying to cheer Rath up with ice cream, the manager clapped his hands. We don't have the Lancholan chicken, but we have something even better. What would that be? When the mountain next to the city collapsed, 8 of the Lontics chickens were caught. Lontics chicken? Raon tilted his head. Just like the Lancholan, he had never heard about Lontics before. It's an extremely rare chicken, to the point that it's called the phoenix of food ingredients. Because of its rarity despite the amazing taste, it's said that you have to be royalty to have it, and even then, they can only have it a couple times a year. The tender meat of the big and greasy chicken is one of the greatest delicacies. Oh, how could such a chicken exist? Icy coldness was drooling from Rath's mouth, who jumped up to float in front of the manager. Since we've already finished reopening, would you like stir-fried Lontics? The manager gathered his hands, pleading for him to let him repay Raon. You don't need to go that far, since it sounds like a precious ingredient. Ahem. When Raon tried to refuse, Rath cleared his throat while covering his mouth with his hand. Refusing repayment isn't a virtue. Too much modesty is a flaw. He frowned, hiding his mouth with his hand. Not at all. Lontics chicken is nothing, since you've saved the entire city on top of my daughter. Please, wait for a little while, since I'll prepare it right away. Please, take a seat. The manager and Belle bobbed their heads, then ran to the kitchen at the same time. Humph. Raon looked aside upon hearing a laughing sound. Rath was trembling, covering his mouth. Are you laughing right now? I don't know what you are talking about. Don't speak to the King of Essence. Rath was still pretending to be angry, but he couldn't hide the happiness in his voice. Let's see. Raon put away the hand covering Rath's mouth. The corners of his mouth were raised so high that they looked like they could reach the ceiling. The saltiness is gone so quickly. This Demon King is really as light as a feather. Raon laughed bitterly because of how ridiculously fast his anger was gone. Shut up. Go take a seat instead. Rath blushed. It looked like he was also embarrassed. Ha! Raon shook his head, then went to take a seat at the table in the center. The other Light Wind members also took a seat. Please savor this in the meantime. The manager brought stir-fried pork, liquor, and some simple side dishes from the kitchen. Ahem, just like I heard, this shop's stir-fry is great. It's properly fried at an intense heat without burning the vegetables and the meat. Rath smiled in satisfaction after trying out the stir-fried pork. The way he kept looking in the kitchen's direction while licking his lips showed his anticipation. After enjoying the stir-fried pork and liquor for about 20 minutes, a huge chicken came out on a big dish that an adult man could barely carry. Here is the Lontics stir-fried chicken that's only available today. Enjoy your meal. Enjoy your meal. The manager and Belle expressed their gratitude at each table while placing dishes. It has a nice fragrance. Dorian licked his lips from the stir-fried chicken's fragrance. Indeed. The spicy and sweet fragrance was mouth-watering. Cue quickly. Eat it already. Fast. Rath stuck his tongue out and panted like a dog. He kept tapping on Raon's shoulder, telling him that he couldn't wait any longer. Calm down a little. Raon pushed him aside with his elbow and picked up some of the stir-fried chicken. He placed the vegetables cut into small pieces on the meat, then put it in his mouth. As soon as the garlic's numbing spiciness and the hot pepper's simple spiciness stimulated his mouth, the sweet taste of the sauce engulfed his tongue and neutralized the spicy taste. The harmony between the crispy skin of the chicken and the tender meat followed, creating a small explosion inside his mouth. Wow! Wow! Raon exclaimed. It was different from any chicken that he had tasted before. There was a good reason that it was a rare food even for royalty. Dozens of pieces of gold wouldn't be excessive as a price. Wha? MHM. It's really delicious. It's my first time eating something like this. Dorian, Runan, and the other swordsmen also widened their eyes upon eating the Lontic's stir-fried chicken. Because of the unbearably good taste, they started gobbling up the food with their faces on the dishes. How about you? Raon looked at Wrath next to him. He looked like a man ascending, his eyes closed and arms open. His whole body was trembling in elation. The King of Essence is glad to be alive. He saw the intensity of stir-frying inside this dish. Wrath gave an extremely satisfied smile, slowly opening his eyes. He looked more like an angel rather than a demon king. Did you see this, cub? See what? The King of Essence fought against the world and won. Heaven tried stopping the King of Essence, but he pierced through the wall and obtained this heavenly taste in his tongue. You didn't do anything, though. Raon frowned. The Lontic's chicken appeared because Rimmer and the 10th Apostle destroyed the mountain, and the chicken was offered thanks to Raon's deeds. It was nonsensical to claim it was his doing. Everything is thanks to the King of Essence standing at the center. This is what you call charisma, and this is the Monarch of Wrath. Monarch of Wrath or whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm saying you didn't do anything. Come at me, world. 2 days later. Since Raon and the Light Wind Squad had fully recovered, they left Porvan City amidst the crowd's cheers. The mayor Owist licked his lips, looking at the Light Wind Squad as they got further away. What's the matter? His secretary, Bazin, stepped up next to him. You've looked troubled ever since you talked to the Light Wind's vice leader. Troubled? Yes, I'm troubled. What? What? And no way, did they actually make another request? Bazin panicked and grabbed Owist's sleeve. The requests he made are already enough to endanger our financial situation. We have to use all the budget we saved up last year. Every single request from Raon and the Light Wind cost a lot of money. Bazin couldn't express how glad he was that the request of giving them an ice cream shop wasn't granted. It's not about that. Owist waved his hand. However, it's an even more difficult and troublesome matter. What did he even say? It's simple. He proposed that Porvan to only ask for help from Sieghart in the future. What? Bazin's jaw dropped. That pretty much means that we will be affiliated to them. Asking them to only offer Sieghart missions meant that they were monopolizing the missions. It was a different story from rewarding them by using the city's budget. Moreover, Porvan was located between Bakr Kingdom and Sieghart, which wasn't far away from the Owen Kingdom. Since they were pretty much located at a crossroads, they couldn't easily decide on an affiliation. I'm against it. Since we are located in the middle of multiple forces, a monopoly will most likely aggravate our relationship with other kingdoms. Bazin shook his head in denial. Actually, it's not even worthy of consideration. Since we've always been neutral, we can stay neutral in the future. Yes, that's true. However, Owist looked at Raon's back as he left the front gate. I have a feeling that man will open a new era. Bazin followed Owist's gaze to look at Raon. I'm also aware that he defeated an apostle, but shouldn't it be a coincidence to some extent? I suppose. Moreover, there's a rumor about a future archmage in Bakr. He can apparently use all 4 affinities, and even combat magic on top of that. Since we don't know what is going to happen in the future, it's too dangerous to choose a side. That's also true. Then, there's no need to think about. However, Owist's eyes sunk deep in thought. I'm not currently looking at the man named Raon. What? The future. I'm trying to look at the size of the mountain that man is going to climb in the future. Did you manage to see it? No, I couldn't see it because it's too high. He had met countless famous powerhouses and royals throughout his career as Porvan's mayor, but Raon was more unpredictable than any of them. He couldn't grasp where, and how high, he was going to reach. To that extent? Yes. If I wanted to invest money, I would have invested my entire fortune in him. Bazin gasped. Despite his friendly and gentle appearance, Owist was judicious concerning money and investments. It was his first time seeing him make such an evaluation about another person. I understand what you mean, but isn't it fine to maintain our current condition? It's not like our city loses to any other. There's one city near us that is far better than ours. Kamelun. Ah. The volume of trade in Kamelun was several times larger than Porvan, and they were even bigger in terms of population. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were on a completely different level. We will never be able to surpass them at this rate. Bazin silently nodded. Keep gathering information about Raon Zighart. What information? About where he did which mission, and who he defeated. Make sure to properly confirm before recording them in detail. Owist's eyes, reflecting the sunlight, were filled with passion. Since that information might contain the ladder that would allow our city to climb higher. Lightwind had returned to Zighart. Rimmer normally would have been the one leading the members from the front, but Raon had to take the lead upon reaching the front gate, since Rimmer was wobbling like a zombie. We can finally rest. Porvan was nice, but home is the best. Ah, I'm going to take a bath right away. I need to wash myself. Since they successfully finished their first mission, the members' faces were fully blooming with smiles. Squad leader. Raon dragged Rimmer to the front before Zighart's front gate opened. We've reached the house. Please announce the end of the mission. Air. Rimmer raised his head, faltering like a marionette with broken strings. Look at his face. Wrath giggled while watching Rimmer's unfocused eyes, since he managed to enjoy everything from the delicious food to the ice cream. Raon licked his lips while looking at Rimmer. I should give him a few pieces of gold. He really looked like he was about to wither at that rate. Raon figured he needed to share some of the reward money, even though he would probably end up losing it while gambling. Mission is over. You can go rest now, and lend me some money if you have. As Rimmer was telling them to rest while begging for money at the same time, Zieghart's huge front gate split into half and a man as large as a steel tower stepped out. He was Iliun, the external commander of the house. I'm sorry, but there's somewhere you need to visit before resting. Iliun's sharp eyes gladly examined everyone in front of the Lightwind's formation. The head of house has summoned all of you. He raised his chin and smiled brightly. He's probably giving you a gift, since you raised the house's reputation. Gift? Money? Gold? A spark appeared in Rimmer's dead eyes. Chapter 189. Ren, who had been waiting in front of the Lord's manor, guided Raon into audience chamber. However, is he really going to give us gifts? Glenn's mouth was distorted in displeasure. His pressure was also unusually heavy, making it difficult to breathe. He looks like he is about to toss out a bunch of insults instead of giving gifts. Wrath snickered while looking up at Glenn. Along with the other members of Lightwind, Raon watched Glenn while staying on his knees, and Glenn tilted his chin slightly. Lightwind's vice leader. Yes. Raon slightly lowered his head and calmly answered. Tell me, with your own words, what happened in Porvan City? Yes, sir. The first people we met upon arriving at Porvan City were Morel and Solomon, Balker Kingdom's royal magicians. We made a small bet with them. Bet? It was a simple spar. Did you win? His pressure became even heavier. It felt like the air inside the room would disappear if Raon said he lost. Yes. I won and turned Solomon into our subordinates during the mission. Subordinates, that's nice. Glenn expressed his appreciation, and the heavy atmosphere disappeared at once. Although he seemed to stay aloof from the world, he still seemed to care about the competition between the 6 kings. Continue. Yes. I went to meet the mayor, Owist, after that. Raon told him about everything that happened in Porvan in a more pleasant atmosphere. Glenn flinched for a moment when he mentioned that he tried gathering information in a casino, but the rest was smooth. That's how the 10th apostle took the collapsed 7th apostle and left. What were the casualties? Martha and I received internal injuries, and a few others had minor injuries, but everyone has finished recovering now. Ha! Ren gasped in admiration upon hearing the full story. Poof. Glenn simply nodded, without changing his expression in the slightest. His reaction is too indifferent. I told you, that's not a big deal for people like King of Essence and your head of house. I know. Wrath had cheered up after eating food and ice cream to his heart's content and had begun making irritating comments. Good job. However, the first thing Glenn said was a compliment, despite Wrath's expectations. You must have been nervous because it was your first mission as a swordsman, but you did great. I particularly liked the part where you made Bakr into sidekicks. It wasn't a big deal. We only did what we were naturally supposed to do. Because of the incongruence between Glenn's words and the sharp atmosphere of the audience chamber, the Light Wind members hurriedly shook their heads. Not having a single fatality from clashing head-on against the 5 demons is praiseworthy. This is especially the case because it was your first mission as novice swordsman. Thank you. The swordsmen were overwhelmed by emotion and trembled at being praised by Glenn personally. Everyone seemed to be deeply moved, as it was rare for the man called the destructive king of the north to praise anyone. That is why what will happen from now on is important. Glenn slowly raised himself up from the throne. The powerful energy wave that spread out in an instant made it feel like a mountain was moving. Those that don't know about you will keep looking down on you and pick fights, and those that learned about you from this incident will try to confirm if the rumors of your skills are true. Raon nodded. He's right. Just as Glenn said, those that didn't hear the rumor would look down on them and pick fights like Bakr did, and those that heard the rumor will try to test them to see if they were powerful enough to defeat the white blood religion. Raon could guess that it would become more dangerous and annoying in the future. What you are going to need is unity and might. Since you've been together ever since you were trainees, you shouldn't lose to other squads and divisions in terms of unity, but you are lacking in terms of might. After saying that, Glenn snapped his fingers. Along with a cheerful sound that resounded throughout the audience chamber, the floor shook to the point where it seemed like it would collapse. Rumble. Golden flames surged from the trembling audience chamber's floor in a spiral. Whir. The flame pillar subsided after reaching the ceiling, and a huge circular bookshelf, the entirety of which couldn't be seen at a glance, made its appearance. All kinds of books were crammed inside hundreds of compartments. This is from before. Raon swallowed nervously. It was the bookshelf that he learned about the 10,000 Flames cultivation from. The Library of Enlightenment. Baan's eyes widened as he looked up at the bookshelf. I can't believe I'm witnessing this with my own eyes. He was moved to tears as he grasped his chest and sniffled. Wow! I never thought I would see the Library of Enlightenment one day. It's like a dream. The other Light Wind members also exclaimed. It looked like the bookshelf's name was the Library of Enlightenment. This is the reward for your achievement of getting the upper hand against Bakr and defeating the white blood religion on your first mission. Place your hand at the central area of the library and take 1 book of martial arts each. Thank you. We are honored. The Light Wind members went down to their knees and bowed. You don't need to thank me. Start already. Yes. Raon nodded, then looked at Ban, who understood his intentions and stepped forward. His face turned red in excitement, and he put his hand at the central part of the bookshelf. Whir! The bookshelf vibrated and started rotating, then 1 book slowly dropped from the center. Ah! Bayan raised his trembling hands to accept the book with sparkling eyes. Raon checked the title over his shoulder, and it was called Stance Mastery. Judging from the title, it seemed to be a book about how to control the body itself. I guess that's the area in which he's lacking right now. Since Bayan had a special swordsmanship, Baron Wind, he must have received a technique to control his body to help with that swordsmanship. It really must be choosing what we need the most. Once a warrior put their hand on the library, they seemed to get the technique they needed the most. Raon couldn't tell what kind of magic, formation, and technique had been used to create the library, but it could be only described as divine. Nice. Raon turned around upon hearing a cheerful voice, and Rimmer was nodding in satisfaction. He's feeling better. He was dying just a moment ago because he lost all his money, yet he was already rejoicing at his students getting rewarded. He would be a really nice person if only he could stop gambling. He truly cared about the students, but he showed the ugly side of a human being where money and gambling were concerned. Raon figured he might need to start a campaign to stop him from gambling. Runan. MHM. Raon sent Runan up next. She got a swordsmanship that would allow a more flashy and sharp control of the water attribute aura. Martha received a powerful and destructive footwork, which was suitable for her. Dorian got footwork specialized in dodging, and a paper on top. And curiously, it was written on the paper how to store and handle baggage more efficiently instead of a martial art. Every light-wind swordsman received a suitable book, and Raon's turn eventually came. I wonder what I'm going to get. Raon licked his lips, looking at the bookshelf. Footwork would be the best, I think. He still had many sword techniques to learn, and he didn't need more ways to control his body since he had the Ring of Fire. Since he could only learn half of the Supreme Harmony steps, what he needed the most was another footwork to follow the river footwork. He placed his hand at the center of the bookshelf, hoping to gain a footwork. Whir! The Library of Enlightenment rotated, vibrating more than double the amount it did while it dealt with other swordsmen. However, no book appeared, no matter how much it spun. Ha! Raon tilted his head, placing his hand on the library once again, but the bookshelf wasn't moving. It just remained still, not vibrating or rotating. What's going on? He was confused and looked at Glenn, but he simply looked indifferent. There doesn't seem to be any martial arts you need here. Is that even possible? The bookshelf seems to dislike you. Ah! Raon tried placing his hand on it once again, but obviously the bookshelf showed no reaction. This is it for today. Glenn snapped his fingers, and the library sank underground with a gold flame, just like when it arrived. My lord! As Raon was thinking it wasn't his day, Martha raised her hand while trembling. What's the matter? It was all thanks to Raon that we managed to survive this mission. I'd gladly return the footwork I received if it meant Raon could get a different reward. She finished her sentence, despite being subjected to the powerful pressure from Glenn's gaze. Martha? Raon narrowed his eyes. Bayan would have been a different story, but he didn't expect Martha to say that at all. It was even more surprising than the fact that the bookshelf didn't give him a book. Ugh! Martha bit her lips to the point that it seemed like it would bleed, her eyes fixated on Glenn without looking back at Raon. As she's right. Since we are only here thanks to Raon, we will also return these books if he won't get any reward. Bayan, Runan, and the other swordsmen stepped up next to Martha, and handing over their books. You are gravely mistaken. After silently staring at them for a moment, he walked up to the edge of the platform with his hands clasped behind his back. Sorry? It's not over just because he didn't get a book. You don't need to worry, as I'm planning on rewarding the vice leader of Lightwind in some other way later. I knew it. Raon nodded. It was a shame that he didn't get any book on martial arts, but Glenn could be trusted when it came down to rewards and punishments. He could trust him to reward him in some other way. Ah, thank you. It was impudent of me. Martha took the book back, her face turning red. You will leave now. Glenn waved his hand, as if they were annoying him. Thank you for rewarding the squad members. Raon bowed deeply at Glenn before standing. He looked at Rimmer, but he just smiled faintly, meaning that they should leave without him. We will be leaving. He nodded, then left the audience chamber alongside the Lightwind. Slam! The audience chamber's door closed, and Glenn, Ren and Rimmer were the only ones left inside the Lord's Manor. How shall I say it? The Lightwind doesn't feel like a new organization. Ren smiled gently. It's really nice to see how they care for each other. I also didn't expect Martha to ask me to care for Raon. Glenn nodded, looking at the door everyone left through. Young Master Raon didn't express his sadness despite having missed the reward, and the way he congratulated everyone instead made me think he really is built differently. Ahem, that's true. Glenn cleared his throat, the corners of his mouth loosening as soon as Raon was complimented. Who do you think you should thank for that? Rimmer smiled broadly and stood next to Ren. It's only possible because I'm keeping the balance at the center. He grinned, pointing at himself with his finger. Yes, thank you for your work. Glenn narrowed his eyes while looking at Rimmer. There wasn't really anything that could be called work. They did everything during the mission. Rimmer shook his head. He would brag about himself when the children were praised, and he would give credit to the children when he was being praised. He truly was a strange person. How strong was the 10th apostle? He's surpassed the second wall. I'm not exactly sure, since we didn't fight all out, but I'm sure that he's at least a grandmaster. I see. Glenn's expression remained indifferent, despite hearing that he was a grandmaster. I should have killed him the first time I saw him. It couldn't be helped back then. The White Blood Religion's leader and Eden's head were with him. Rimmer shrugged, looking at the window, where golden sunlight was shining through. Anyway, Raon helped me a lot in this case. Is that so? Yes. The 10th apostle decided to retreat because Raon managed to defeat the 7th apostle. Raon was also the one that made Balker shut their mouth. You should have seen Morel using honorifics when speaking to Raon. The way Morel, who was called the Snake of Raging Flame, was forced to call Raon Sir was a sight to behold, one that he would pay any amount of money for. That's why I ask you to please look after Raon, rather than playing a trick with the library. Trick? Glenn's eyebrows lowered slightly, expressing that he had never done such a thing. You used his shapeless aura to stop any books from coming out. Rimmer licked his lips, looking at the floor where the bookshelf used to be located. I understand why you did that, though. When Raon touched the bookshelf, Rimmer certainly felt that a book was trying to come out, but Glenn used the shapeless aura to stop the book from coming out. That was the reason it looked like there was no reaction. You wanted to teach him personally after stopping a book from coming out, right? I wish our Raon knew the ardent feelings of a grandfather for his grandson. Silence. Glenn clicked his tongue and shook his hand. Yes, sir. The noisy one is going to leave, so please reward me with something as well. Rimmer extended his hands while smiling. Of course, I was intending to reward you as well. Glenn gestured with his head, and Ren brought a heavy-looking pouch. Thank you for your efforts. Ah ha ha ha. Thank you. Rimmer's face beamed with a smile once he opened the pouch to see the golden light inside. Is that reward enough? Ah, of course. I can play as much as I want with this. But that won't be enough to win against him. There's a good reason why he is famous throughout the continent for gambling. He's still human. He's bound to lose one day. Can you get your head screwed on right? The dead won't return to life no matter how much money you lose. My lord, that's... Ha, forget about the story from the past. It's time to talk about the mistakes now. Glenn came down from the platform. The entire lord's manner turned cold from his heavy steps. What? A mistake? What mistake? Rimmer stepped backward, hiding the gold pouch behind his back. This. Glenn waved a paper in his hand. It was the report he sent before. 2 lines. Did you seriously write a 2-line-long report after fighting the apostles? That was because it was urgent news. Since the fight was already over, you should have had enough time to write about how you won and how heavily the children were injured. Ah. It's because you were worried about Raon. You should have said that from the beginning. Rimmer was stepping backward, but he suddenly stopped. He wasn't against a wall, he couldn't run backward anymore. As shapeless aura? Did you use a shapeless aura to create a wall? He tried to walk forward instead in surprise, but he couldn't move at all. All 4 directions were blocked with a shapeless aura. Rumble. And crimson lightning started to appear above his head. Reporting is one of the mandatory missions of a squad leader. Even though you've completed the mission, since you didn't properly deal with the aftermath, I'm going to punish you accordingly. Or rather than a punishment, I'm going to die if I get hit by that. You aren't going to die. That's right. You won't die, at least. Glenn gestured with his hand, and the crimson lightning that was rumbling in the air struck him with a thunderous sound. Sword field CRE. Qua. Rimmer tried to open the sword field, but it was already too late. Dozens of lightning strikes shredded the sword field that was trying to open, then engulfed his entire body. Wham! The crimson light sparked in the audience chamber for a while. Raon finished dinner with Sylvia and the maids in the annex building before returning to his room. He sighed. I'm exhausted. He had to speak about what happened in Porvan to Glenn for the first time, and to everyone in the annex building for the second time. Telling the tales of that long incident twice a day was even more exhausting than a battle. The King of Essence also feels dead tired from listening to that tedious and unremarkable story twice. Wrath shook his hand, telling him to sleep already. I guess I'll do that. He was drowsy either because he led everyone back to Sieghart or because he had to tell the story twice when he wasn't really that great at storytelling. Knock, knock, knock. After he took off the outerwear in order to wash himself before sleeping, someone knocked 3 times. It was Judiel's signal. Enter. Yes. Judiel opened the door and entered with a thin book in her hand. She bobbed her head, handing over the book she had brought him. What is this? I've gathered more detailed data about Sieghart's armed organizations while you were on your mission. Raon opened the book Judiel gave him. While the document was more focused on the division leaders and squad leaders during the selection ceremony, it now had information about the squad and division's characteristics and the main personnel. She must have investigated in advance, since he would have to cooperate with other squads and divisions a lot in the future. I've received an order from the Central Martial Palace to determine your true power. They are more cautious now. Are they intending to make their move after figuring out my skills? That seems to be their intentions. Because he managed to defeat an apostle this time, the Central Martial Palace must have given up on making a rash move. Give them a plausible report by pretending you happen to see me training. Tell them that I must be about to become a master. Understood. Judiel nodded and continued. While investigating the armed organizations, I've also looked into the white blood religion, and it appears that the 7th apostle you fought against was a newbie, and the 10th apostle has been a 10th apostle for 30 years at least. Raon was already aware of that fact, since the 10th apostle was still in the same position back when he used to be the assassin Raon. By the way, there are only 4 apostles that have maintained their positions for over 30 years. They are the real monsters of the white blood religion. I suppose. The level of their powerhouses was more important than numbers for their armed organization. The reason the 6 kings and the 5 demons were called the strongest in the continent was also because of the strongest people in those organizations. Take care in the future. Judiel simply said goodbye and turned around, since she finished conveying what she came for. Thank you. It's nothing. She bowed with an indifferent expression on her face before leaving the room. Raon opened the book and checked the contents in detail. The information about the divisions, squad leaders, and vice leaders was written in more detail. There's another person that likes gambling other than our squad leader. He noticed one vice division leader that liked gambling. However, he was pretty good at it, and it was written that he was a confident person that won every time he gambled. He was the complete opposite of Rimmer. That's pretty good. After checking the book from the beginning to the end, he placed it in his drawer and stood up. He dressed and picked up Heavenly Drive. What's up? Where are you trying to go instead of sleeping? My body's itching after reading this. I'll be back after training a little. You shouldn't say you will be back, since the King of Essence has to follow you. Why are you doing whatever you want when you are just a tenant? Tenant? Me? Yes. The only reason you still have that body is because the King of Essence is considerate. I guess you are a parasite instead of a tenant. What did you just say? The King of Essence is the true owner of this body. He could take over this body any time he wanted. Prove it. Raon bobbed his finger, telling him to bring it on. Ugh. Wrath couldn't rashly challenge him by spreading around his wrath and coldness. He was aware of the fact that he would only end up giving away stats if he challenged him. Since it's not going to take a long time, hang in there a little bit more. Raon snickered as he left the annex building. As he made his way towards the open area in front of the lake, someone was walking towards him from the direction of the main building. Slow but dignified steps. His blonde hair was shining brilliantly under the moonlight, and his red eyes were lighting up the darkness. Why is he here? It was Glenn. Raon couldn't even begin to guess why he was in the annex building when he hadn't visited it once since the 100th day after Raon's birth. Greeting my lore. He was trying to kneel and bow, but something in the air stopped his waist and neck from moving. You shouldn't be noisy during the night. Standing in front of Raon, Glenn's serious eyes sparkled. It means less effort for me, since you are already out. Sorry? Follow me. He turned around and gestured with his hand for Raon to follow him. Where are we going? I told you before, didn't I? Glenn glanced back. He was frowning, his gaze cold. I said that I'd reward you in a different way. Chapter 190. Glenn stopped upon reaching the open area of the annex building. His eyes were unusually shallow as he slowly looked around. Raon silently watched him while standing behind him. What is he trying to do? He couldn't understand why he was trying to reward him at such a late hour. Even though he was capable of analyzing most people's mindsets, Glenn was completely unpredictable. How strange. Wrath narrowed his eyes, watching Glenn's back. What is? I think that old man has become even stronger than before. Even stronger than before? Yes. I'm sure he raised his proficiency. He is such an arrogant old man, becoming even stronger in his state despite being a human. He twisted his lips in displeasure. Ha! Raon gasped. How could that happen? He hadn't heard anything about Glenn fighting anyone or training recently. He couldn't believe that he became even stronger despite not having done anything. Once you reach the level of the King of Essence or that old man, training becomes meaningless. Instead, this is the important part. Wrath pointed at the left side of his chest with his finger. Willpower? It's not willpower. It is the will itself. It's the mind. Mind? You have to polish your mind rather than your martial arts. You have to forge your own way instead of following a road that someone else has created before you. Does the same go for you? Of course. The King of Essence also walked his own path instead of following other people's paths once he became powerful enough. Back in Devildom, the King of Essence. Wrath told him about how he got stronger, bragging about himself. So, that's why. Raon nodded. Darius Robert also kept getting stronger despite not having any special training. He thought it was simply because he was talented, but that wasn't the case. He must have been continuously polishing his mind as well. It's difficult. Opening a new path by polishing the will and mind wasn't something he could look into, as he wasn't even a master yet. However, he had a feeling that he could reach a higher place even faster if he began training that way. It's not impossible. Wrath nodded. However, it's much less efficient and mediocre for you to try right now. It will be too difficult while not bearing much result. That's fine. He had continuously walked a difficult and unmanageable path in his previous life. He was confident he could endure it. Just as he decided that he would also aim for the growth of his mind, Glenn turned around. His thoughtful eyes returned to being even more cold-hearted than usual. How much have you learned of the Supreme Harmony steps that I taught you before? Glenn took a step forward and raised his chin slightly. His tall stature and cold gaze put pressure on Raon's shoulders. Just the first step. Raon bit his lip and responded. It was embarrassing, but he couldn't remember anything except for the first step. Pathetic. Glenn frowned. Coldness spread out in the open area, making it feel like the temperature had dropped. It's true that the first step of the Supreme Harmony steps is an excellent move and important for the technique, but you won't be able to progress any further if you are satisfied with that. I'm sorry. It's better this way. Sorry? Instead of teaching you a new martial art, I should just teach you the Supreme Harmony steps. Since your laziness is the reason you need to learn it, you shouldn't blame me for this. He shook his hand, telling him that it was because of his own laziness that he couldn't get a better technique. All right. Raon nodded. He wasn't sure what else he could have obtained, but he initially wanted footwork anyway. Supreme Harmony steps was more than good enough for him. He used the Ring of Fire to the extreme. Since he was now stronger than before and the Ring of Fire was also at a higher level, he was looking forward to understanding more from the demonstration. I'm starting now. Glenn loosened his coat slightly and extended his left foot. Just like the last time, a single step looked like it could reach anywhere as it seeped into the land of night. It felt like he was in the open area and on the moon in the sky at the same time. The second step was quick. Even though Raon was using the ring of fire to the best of his ability, he had difficulties following it with his eyes, which were used to frost pond. It was so fast that it looked like Glenn was standing still. The third step was flashy. Glenn's body multiplied into 10 in an instant with a light similar to a cluster of stars, then fused back into one. The mysterious step seemed to incorporate illusions. The fourth step was heavy and slow. It felt like he had the open area, or rather the entire Zeeghart domain, under his feet as he dominated the space through his step. Glenn took 5 more steps after that. The world changed alongside him each time he moved. Ah! Raon trembled, his mouth slightly open. He was excited. It felt like the energy of the entire universe was surrounding Glenn. What I saw last time wasn't even the tip of the iceberg. He managed to realize it thanks to becoming stronger and increasing the Ring of Fire's proficiency. The Supreme Harmony steps that Glenn showed him last time in the audience chamber wasn't even a tenth of what he did just then. It was truly a great martial art, calling it heavenly wasn't enough. Did you see it? Glenn stopped after demonstrating the Supreme Harmony steps twice in a row. Although he just used a technique that felt surreal, not a single strand of his hair was out of place. I saw it. Raon nodded. Learning it was a different story, but he managed to see all the Supreme Harmony steps that Glenn showed him. That's a nice answer, at least. Glenn laughed coldly, then dusted off his coat. Try doing it yourself. All right. Raon extended his left foot, catching his breath. I don't need to show everything. Since it wasn't a lower grade or an intermediate martial art, it was impossible to copy an advanced technique after seeing it only twice. Because Glenn shouldn't be expecting that either, Raon only needed to show what he felt, just like last time. Thud. He sharply pierced into the moonlight as he advanced with the first step. The moment he engraved the will that he could do anything in his heart, his body cooperated with the land to complete the first step, the one that could reach anywhere. He then took the second step. He incorporated the breathing technique of extreme quickness that he obtained when he practiced with Frost Pond. His vision narrowed in an instant, and his dashing body felt like it became a blade. The third was about change and illusion. He moved his body by using the principles of the flame spirit he learned in the cave. He could feel his body spreading out like an illusion, just like the red flower petals decorating the space. The fourth was about weight. Raon used as much aura as he could to stomp the ground. His pressure, spreading over his shoulders, became a heavy wave that began to dominate the space while overwhelming the cold air. Kring! He rotated the rings of fire to a point where his heart felt numb and reproduced the Supreme Harmony step that Glenn had demonstrated. The power and speed were incomparable, but the direction was similar at least. Huff! Huff! Once Raon stopped his steps, he breathed heavily and perspired profusely. Although he only repeated it once, the tiredness of his body and mind felt like he had trained for the entire day. Pathetic. Glenn wrinkled his nose while looking down on Raon, who was panting while grabbing his knees. It's not just the posture, but I can see that the direction is slightly awry at times. Since this is the last time, try doing your best. Glenn shook his hand as if he were annoyed, before showing the Supreme Harmony steps once more and telling him the principles. Thank you. Raon bowed after perfectly memorizing the postures and the principles. A footwork can't be completed by just following the footsteps on the ground. A footwork can only be called complete if you can adjust and apply it depending on the situation. I see. Raon nodded. Just like he said, the important part of footwork was deciding which one to use in a situation. You don't need to be impatient because you can't easily break through the master's wall. You just need to keep training your body and mind like you've always done, and you will find one day that the wall has already collapsed. He turned around after giving Raon some advice to become a master on top of the footwork. Raon approached Glenn from behind as he was about to leave. Why are you being so kind to me? The way he visited him late at night to teach him the Supreme Harmony steps and gave him advice to become a master could by no means be called ordinary. Kind? Glenn turned his head. Despite my lacking skills, I still can tell that Supreme Harmony Steps is the greatest footwork in existence. Since you taught me something like this and even gave me advice to become a master. Ha! You are free to misunderstand, but you are too ignorant. Glenn must have been laughing at him, as his lips were slightly curled up. Normally, when there's a newly appointed squad leader or vice squad leader, I personally teach them an appropriate technique and give them advice. Since you didn't have that opportunity yet and couldn't receive a book from the library, I decided to give you all of it at once. Ah! Moreover, you aren't the only one that will benefit from becoming a master. The achievement of the youngest master being born in Sieghart will give us an opportunity to crush the other 6 kings and 5 demons. I only did that because it was natural to do so. Since it wasn't because I particularly like you, you should stop misunderstanding that I'm being kind to you. I apologize. Raon shook his head. He thought there was another reason that Glenn visited him late at night and taught him the technique, but he must have been mistaken. He only cared about the house and fairness, just like before. Glenn turned around once again. He looked like he would leave right away, but he turned his head instead. Let me ask you one thing. Yes. You said you raked in all the money from casinos in order to find a member of Thieves' Guild. Who taught you how to gamble? Raon swallowed nervously. Glenn was well aware of the fact that he couldn't possibly have gambled, as he had been living in the annex building. Since he couldn't tell him about his previous life, there was only one name that he could give as an excuse. I learned it from the Light Wind Squad leader. Rimmer. I knew it would be him. Glenn nodded. The open area was filled with the chilly atmosphere of the Northern Ocean's tidal wave in an instant. I've created the Supreme Harmony Steps to match me. You should learn my Supreme Harmony Steps, then make it your own to complete it. After staring at Raon for a moment, Glenn disappeared from sight, like scattering snowflakes. My own Supreme Harmony Steps. Raon exhaled lightly, looking at the spot where Glenn had disappeared. His advice seemed to align with what Wrath told him earlier. Since it's over now, go to sleep already. The King of Essence is tired. Wait a moment. He shook his head, looking at Glenn's footprints on the ground. Since those traces were pretty much a special opportunity for him, sleeping wasn't an option. Raon rotated the ring of fire and used the Supreme Harmony Steps, following Glenn's footprints on the ground. Because the tension left him, he failed his first attempt. However, he regained his posture and kept repeating it until he succeeded. The first step that he thought he had gotten used to was also completely different from Glenn's, so he figured he should start it over and repeated it over and over. With his body practicing the footwork and his brain imagining Glenn's movements, the whole world turned white, and he felt like the only thing that existed in the world were the footprints and himself. Raon didn't realize that messages had appeared in front of his eyes as he kept practicing the Supreme Harmony Steps, looking at the footprints. You are entering an extremely focused state. The Supreme Harmony Steps acquisition is accelerated. Inside the pure white space, without a single speck of dust, multiple bloody red pillars were lined up. There was a high platform at the deepest part, and the inside couldn't be seen because of a red curtain. Coup! The seventh apostle's murderous moan could be heard from the center of the strange place, which almost looked like a temple. It hurts. It hurts too much. The seventh apostle screamed, caressing his chest, arm, and thigh that the blade of Requiem had cut through. Gray blood smeared his white clothes. The pain isn't going away. The injuries aren't fading even though I used bloody techniques. He grit his teeth while tearing out his own flesh. Although he kept using the white spirit aura, the excruciating pain continued instead of his injury healing. The master is coming soon. Shut your mouth. The 10th apostle, who was leaning his back against a pillar while watching him, narrowed his eyes. Huff! Overwhelmed by his pressure, the 7th apostle shut his mouth and shrunk his shoulders. However, his body kept trembling in pain. Swish! Along with the clear sound of blowing wind, the curved shadow of a woman's body appeared from behind the curtain. Greeting the master. Greeting the master. The 10th apostle knelt, and the 7th apostle also bowed while enduring the pain. There was only one person the apostles would call their master and kneel for. She was the master of the white blood religion, the religious leader of the white blood. You may rise. A hand lightly waved at them from inside the curtain, and the 10th and 7th apostles raised their heads at the same time. Unlike the other transcenders, the White Blood's religious leader didn't have a powerful pressure. Her faint pressure almost felt like it didn't exist, but the mysterious and elegant atmosphere around her was incomparable to anyone else. So, were you defeated by a Sieghart boy? The sweet voice resounding from the other side of the curtain felt like it could melt the soul. I wasn't defeated. Come this way. Ah, yes. The 7th apostle wasn't able to stand up, so he pretty much crawled towards the platform. The White Blood religion's leader examined the 7th apostle's injury with passionate eyes. Each time her gaze was directed at the 7th apostle, his whole body trembled. It's ghastly energy. And this ghastly energy has resentment against the White Blood. She stretched her long finger over the curtain, and yellow blood came out from the 7th apostle's injury to float in the air. The pain. The 7th apostle's eyes widened. He felt like thousands of ants were biting him just a moment before, yet it was gone in an instant. That yellow blood must have contained an extreme amount of malice. Thank you, Master. The White Blood religion's leader nodded slightly before tilting her head. Who defeated you again? I was really just careless. If I meet him again, I'll bite off his neck. Is it even possible for a master to lose against an expert because of carelessness? That's... I guess I made a mistake in raising you. Kua. The red curtain was lifted slightly, and beautifully shining black eyes could be seen. Although the 7th apostle could only see her eyes, he grasped his neck as if he couldn't breathe, and the 10th apostle bit his lips. You lost all of the sacrifices, and the rumor spread about Sieghart's young one defeating an apostle. I had some expectations of you, but it's a shame. This is as far as you go. The amount of pressure coming from the religious leader was less than rock bottom. However, it soared in an instant to reach the sky. The entire place trembled as if it would collapse, despite being built sturdily. I'll take care of him. The 7th apostle mustered all his strength to open his mouth. I'll kill him and erase everyone that spread the rumor from the earth. Please give me one more chance. He slammed his head on the ground so hard that he could have started bleeding. I'll make the entire world fear the White Blood religion. Please, give me a chance. Someone like you cannot create fear towards the White Blood religion. Cold sparks appeared from the religious leader's eyes, and veins popped all over the 7th apostle's face. However, it would be too harsh to kill you because of a single failure. Ugh. The 7th apostle realized she really did intend to kill him, and his face turned pale. Take this with you. The religious leader snapped her fingers, and a small glass bottle came flying towards him from the other side of the curtain. It contained liquid, as transparent as water. Am I really getting this precious? This is your last chance. The line of the religious leader's jaw twisted up from the other side of the curtain. Since I'll squeeze out even more blood from your body if you fail again. That's never going to happen. The 7th apostle swallowed nervously, then bowed. You can go. Yes. He slammed his head on the ground before disappearing from that place. How was he? The religious leader's gaze was now directed at the 10th apostle, who was kneeling on the right. His huge potential is worthy of admiration. He even declared war against me when he seemed about to collapse at any moment. The 10th apostle immediately answered, since he realized the religious leader was asking about Raon instead of the 7th apostle. To that extent? His weapon is also threatening. He might become a huge hindrance to the cult if we leave him alone. The religious leader groaned slightly and caressed her own lips. Was his name Raon Sieghart? Yes. If the 7th loses again next time, you shall bring him here. Bring him here alive? Of course, since I'm going to make him my disciple. Why? Does that remind you of your past? It was nothing. The religious leader smiled, and the 10th apostle shook his head. Ho-hoo, don't you think it would be interesting if Sieghart's greatest talent joined the White Blood religion? Her excited laughter seeped into the white space. I'm already curious how that old man will look. The Heavenly Blade Division leader was watching the open area of the annex building from the North Grave Mountain. Although Glenn had already left, Raon was still practicing the Supreme Harmony steps in the same location. Why did you follow me all the way here? The Heavenly Blade leader turned around towards the voice coming from behind her. Glenn was looking at her with his usual gaze, his hands behind his back. My mission is to follow the head of house unless I'm assigned to another mission. The Heavenly Blade leader lowered her chin slightly and answered. I think it was too much. The Heavenly Blade leader closed her eyes. Too much? I'm not saying that it was excessive to give him the Supreme Harmony steps. What I mean is that the Supreme Harmony steps are too much for the current Light Winds Vice Squad leader to handle. What Raon received was an opportunity, but it was a poisonous one. It was as clear as day that he would only end up wasting time, no matter how much of a genius he was. I see. Glenn nodded, neither refuting nor agreeing with her. He watched Raon for a while before turning around. You should watch him until he returns to the annex building. What about my lord? I need to teach someone a lesson. Ah. She didn't need him to tell her who he was going to teach a lesson, since she could already tell. It must have been the crazy bastard that taught gambling to that excellent gemstone. Understood. The Heavenly Blade leader nodded, and Glenn melted into the shadow and disappeared. Although no one was watching her, the Heavenly Blade leader kept watching Raon with a straight posture. Since it was a mission Glenn personally gave her, she prepared herself to react to any situation. It shouldn't take long. Judging from the way Raon was using his footwork, he kept failing and there was no sign of progress. Since there was no way he would continue that boring practice when he didn't even have a clue, she guessed that Raon would give up soon enough and leave. However, despite her expectations, he didn't leave the open area after a few hours had passed. He kept practicing his footwork until sunrise, collapsing in exhaustion and falling down from failure. Thud. Raon's feet stopped when the rising sun started to shine upon the open area. Is it over? His tenacity was pretty good, at least. She admired Raon's tenacity, since he kept practicing footwork for over 8 hours without resting at all, even though all he did was fail. However, despite her expectations, Raon lowered his posture once again instead of returning to the annex building. How admirable. But it still won't work, since it's impossible, huh? The Heavenly Blade leader's eyes widened upon witnessing Raon advancing through the golden light of daybreak. That guy. What the hell?